compact SUV has turned around the fortunes of a fair few automakers in India. The X1 did it for BMW, Audi tasted massive success with the Q3, and Mercedes-Benz saw a spike in sales with the GLA. And now Volvo has launched its brand new entry-level compact luxury SUV in India, the XC40.
So it's only very obvious that we'd be extremely eager to compare the XC40 against all its contemporaries, which is why one nice bright early morning we have the Audi Q3, the Mercedes-Benz GLA and the X1 all here to go up against the new boy. Now, to make this easier, we're going to take 5 main parameters and compare all these cars against those parameters. First one, of course, price. Second one, interior space, because that is very important for the Indian market. Interior features will be our third. Engine and NVH levels will be our fourth, and overall design will be our fifth. So let's get started with price.
The prices for the BMW X1 range from 34,50,000 to 44,50,000 rupees. The Q3 is next in line, priced at 34,70,000 rupees for the petrol and 36,50,000 to 42,88,000 rupees for the diesel. The Mercedes-Benz GLA, on the other hand, is the most affordable of the lot, with prices starting at 33,70,000 rupees for the petrol and the diesel range starting from 31,70,000 to 38 lakh rupees. Comparatively though, the Volvo XC40, available in just one fully loaded variant, is priced at 39,90,000 rupees, and that is great value for money. So let's move on from price to something that is very important for the luxury car buyer, and in fact any car buyer in India: interior space.
Now, rear seat comfort is something that's very important in India, especially in a segment like this, because most owners will be driven by a chauffeur, and all of these cars have common features like a panoramic sunroof, which makes the rear seat cabin and just the cabin in general really airy. But then you have the likes of the GLA, which has a very small, very slim window line, which makes it a little claustrophobic on the side here, and the GLA definitely is the smallest of the lot too when it comes to sheer space, both in terms of leg space and in terms of width in the back seat. Where the GLA also loses out, it's the only car amongst the four that doesn't have a rear AC vent. And with temperatures the way they are in India today, you really do need a rear AC vent to blow that little bit of extra air to make the rear passengers a little more comfortable.
Come on! While the XC40 is the newest of the lot here, it isn't actually the most spacious. That honor goes to the BMW X1. And not only is it the most spacious at the rear in terms of legroom, headroom and shoulder space, it is also the airiest, as it is the only SUV here that has a third row of windows on the C-pillar too. Come on, let me see your hands in the air when you hear this, when you drop. Sticking with the interior theme, let's now see which one of these four SUVs gives you the best bang for your buck when it comes to interior design and, more importantly, the number of features offered.
Now, the Audi Q3 is the oldest one of the lot here as a generation, and that age really does start to show after a while, and especially in this car it does show. So you have a manual flippy down screen, and even the user interface just doesn't feel as modern as it does, nowhere near as modern as it does in like the Volvo or even the BMW. But even the materials used, the colors used, the wooden palette here, just the hint of gloss black, it just feels one generation older, and it desperately needs a change. For that reason, the Q3, when it comes to interior design and interior features, definitely ranks a lot lower than the other cars, even though you do get stuff like this big panoramic sunroof and the basic amenities like a Bluetooth infotainment system. But again, it's old, it needs a change, and it's nowhere near the benchmark of the segment.
And then you have the Mercedes-Benz GLA. With the floating screen, jet turbine-like AC vents and typical Mercedes-Benz center console, it isn't too bad, especially with those silver accents. But the BMW X1 is just that slight bit better. While the typically BMW-esque driver-focused dashboard that is angled towards the driver's seat does work in the favor of the X1, the same old amber backlit dials are getting a little too old for wear now, and honestly, what the X1 really needs to make it a great little package is that all-digital instrument cluster like in the likes of the bigger BMWs.
And then we move to the benchmark of the segment, which is without a shadow of doubt the Volvo XC40. Now just like the 90 and the 60, it gets this virtually mounted screen which does everything that you need to do, but it still has its annoyances, but you do get used to it. But it offers so much more than all the other cars. For example, you get a virtual digital instrument cluster which none of the other cars have, and it's the little attention to detail that really matters. So these slim vents, the knobs are really nicely detailed. Even this little piece on the side door, and the fact you can get the door lining and the carpets in a shade of bright orange if you buy a white paint job on the outside. It's stuff like this that really does attract people to a package like this. And you also get features like wireless charging, which is again something only the Volvo gets. And considering the fact that most new smartphones do give you an option of wireless charging, it's a pretty handy feature. And you get the big panoramic sunroof, which in this case is tinted. So even if you have temperatures of 47, 48, or even plus 50 degrees outside, it does help keep that cabin cool. And that's really important in India. So in this segment, when it comes to interior features and design, the Volvo wins it just hands down. Now before we start driving the XC40, I do have a small little grouse that I need to address. Now it might be my OCD going all bonkers, which it does sometimes, but most things in this car are quite ergonomic, apart from the fact that the AC blower vent still has to be controlled through the menu. But there is a little glitch. There's a little thing that Volvo has forgotten. When you start the car is in park, and for a normal car, you pull the lever backwards once, you put into drive, you slot it in, and you get going. In the Volvo though, the Swedes have done it a little differently. You pull the lever back twice. Now that just doesn't feel very natural to me. And now, yes, I know what you're saying. You might get used to it after a while, and I certainly did get used to it after a while, but it just little annoyances. That said, once you do get going, it's a whole different ball game. Volvo has made it categorically clear that it's only going to be making 4-cylinder engines going forward, and this 4-cylinder engine is the 2-litre diesel with 190 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. Now, the Volvo XC40 isn't making any claims of being the sportiest SUV of its segment. In fact, it just wants to get you from point A to point B in utmost luxury and with the best levels of safety that it can provide to you and your family, and it does that very well. But it still gives you all that power and performance to play along with, and it still gets you a lovely gearbox, which is one of the nicest, smoothest, most seamless gearboxes that I've driven in a long time, and the NVH levels are the real deal here. It's quiet, it's refined, and even in the city, even in traffic, you won't feel very tired actually driving it across long distances either.
Volvo will only be offering the XC40 in India with a diesel engine, unlike Audi and Mercedes-Benz that have a petrol and a diesel engine option for the Q3 and the GLA respectively. The petrol Q3 gets a 1.4-litre TSI engine that makes 148 bhp of peak power and 250 Newton meters of peak torque, while the GLA gets a 2-litre turbo engine making 181 bhp of power and 300 Newton meters of torque. Moving to the diesels though, the BMW X1, the Audi Q3 and the Volvo XC40 all get a 2-litre turbocharged diesel engine, while Mercedes-Benz gets a slightly larger 2.1-litre motor. Strangely, however, the Mercedes-Benz is the least powerful with 168 bhp and 350 Nm, while the Audi is the second runner-up here at 184 bhp and 380 Nm. The BMW is the most powerful of the lot at 188 horsepower and 400 Nm, while the Volvo comes in very close second with 187 horsepower and an equal 400 Nm of torque. But as we mentioned earlier, the Volvo doesn't really give any pretensions of being a thoroughbred driver's car.
Now the BMW though, this definitely does have a sporting pretension. If you drive any other car here, you drive the Mercedes, you drive the Volvo, the Audi, they feel pretty much similar to drive. They're all easy, light on their feet. They feel easy to drive in general. Get into the BMW and drive that back to back, and then you really know what we drone about as automotive journalists. Steering feedback is so crucial, so critical sometimes, and this car just has it in spades. It is a nicer car to drive on the whole. It's a definite sportier car to drive. So if you are looking for a sportier SUV in this category, in this segment, just go buy the BMW X1 and be done with it. You don't even have to further look into this review. But if you're looking as a package, the BMW is pretty well matched there too. 186 horsepower, 400 Newton meters of torque from a 2-litre engine, again all-wheel drive. It's a pretty even feel across the range, but the BMW just feels a little nicer to drive. The X1 is for the driver and not really for the driven. And so we come to the final parameter of our comparison test, exterior design. Now, we've arranged these cars in a very random way, almost scattered, so that we get a nice good view from every angle. But let's start with the two oldest ones that we have, the Audi Q3 and the Mercedes-Benz GLA, in this very classic Mercedes-Benz color, because I remember the old S-classes really rocking these colors in the 80s. Now, the GLA is more of an A-class on stilts. It's the most crossover-like design approach to this whole segment as compared to the other ones. So you have a very curvaceous design, but you do have these aggressive bits like the grille, like that silver skid plate on the bottom, and all of this of course came in the facelift. But the car still looks very soft, very muted as compared to something like even the Q3, which is actually older than the GLA. Now I remember driving the Q3 first 6 years ago, and it still looks pretty much quite nice, especially in a shade of red like this. Now it has had two facelifts, two midlife facelifts as compared to just the one that most SUVs or most cars have during their life cycle. And even now with the new grille which sort of blends into the headlights, it does look quite cool. But let's move from one red car to the other red car. Now the difference in red when you park these two next to each other is so obvious. While that is a very sporty looking red, this one on the Volvo just screams class, it screams opulence, it screams a little more luxurious an approach to design and a color, especially when combined with all that gloss black treatment that you get on the car. Because remember, this is only going to be available with the R design trim in India, especially at launch. In the future there might be some changes, there might be more trim levels, more design, bumpers, etc. that come around. Currently only the R design spec, and it looks quite cool from the front and on the rear. Now this whole upright design really seems to be working for Volvo. The XC90 does it really well, the 60 and now the 40. So you get a very cool sort of two-tone design, again with the very proud R design logo here, which distinguishes the top from the bottom. Of course the two-tone does seem to be working extremely well for India. And then you've got these very telltale Volvo tail lamps, which are very modern, very different for this car, but still have that signature Volvo touch to them. But we'll move from the XC40 to the BMW X1. Now, in this spec, in the M Sport spec, it does look quite mighty, it does look quite meaningful, especially since you get the big wheels, that M badge on the side, and a whole bunch of M badges actually, and that massive nice bumper, the sportier bumper on the front. It does look really mean, and I like that black color. But again, like the Volvo, very upright, very flat-faced, even though it does have some of those nice light curvy edges to it. Comparing these two though, which are the nicer looking cars in this category, is difficult, because although I do like that car in this spec, I can't say the Volvo is not the nicer car. It just is. It's the nicer looking car, definitely. And also, and very importantly, I think the XC40 will also age much better as compared to all these other cars because of that flat front. Now people do want a small car and people do want a small SUV, but remember, they want their car to look big, and the XC40 does look the biggest of all the cars here. And so it's finally time to come to a verdict on our entry-level luxury SUV shootout. Well, I've got all the 4 keys to all the 4 cars with me. I have to take one home tonight. So which will it be? Well, I'm going to get rid of each key, and that's the corresponding car. So let's start with the Q3. It's just too old. It doesn't have enough tech going for it anymore. It's just too irrelevant, even though it is pretty nice sort of value for money product. So that's the first one out. Now these 3. It's the obvious, it's the GLA. It's just not an SUV per se when you compare it to the sort of competition. And it's a little too soft. And again, there's a new one coming. it just isn't there today. So that's the one that's gone next. So the big one, the Volvo or the BMW. I like the way the BMW drives. I've always been somebody who appreciates a sportier driving car. It looks nice too, especially in an M Sport package, but the Volvo looks nice too, especially in an R design package with the gloss black accents. It's so difficult. But you know what? I think I've made a decision. The Volvo does have the nicer cabin, it's the nicer package. It's got that big screen that really does make a big difference. I do like the way the BMW drives, but that's the one that goes. I am taking the Volvo home tonight, and it is the winner of our entry-level luxury SUV Shootout 2.